it really surprised me in my research into kind of the larger context,
Hmm.
what percentage of kids who are in foster care and then are reunited, that things don't really work out,
Right.
even if they don't need to go back into care. Um, at one point when I was 16, I stayed at a shelter, and a lot of the other kids there had been in foster care and then had been reunited. And, it wasn't working out for any of us.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, it's the amount of support that's given is non-existent. It's the idea of, well, we've taken away the kid, we've given them some therapy that usually is inadequate, and nothing has really substantially changed. If anything, there's been compounded trauma. And there's also the added threat that this can happen again and get worse. So back to your writing this, did it help you to survive it? To give you an example, I was very involved in the punk scene. So when I found out I was going to go to a group home, I was like, that my parents were going to give up parental rights, and there was a court hearing, and that I was going to go into be a ward of the state. I was like, oh my God, that's so punk rock. That's so punk. I just can't wait to tell my fucking friends, because that is like that. And that actually took the terror of it away to turn it into story. So did you have that part of that, have that ability, or were you doing that?
When I was in high school, I loved Sylvia Plath and Sexton, all these kind of
Mhm.
crazy women writers. And a lot of the adults thought it was just like romanticizing mental illness.
We'll put crazy women in air quotes. Good.
Yeah, thanks. um, and I think in hindsight, now that you're saying that, it's like they took really dark shit and they turned it into beautiful, enduring art. And I think that that promise, that idea that I might be able to do that someday, helped me immensely.
Because there's this way that you are both inside and outside of crazy. Like you can't, you're like, okay, I understand this, but I'm also beholden to it. I'm removed, but I'm present. I'm not out of it. Right. So, but you have to be both inside and outside crazy. Understanding it doesn't make
Mm,
it suddenly go away.
yeah,
But it's clear your mother was really bright, very intelligent, and she had her trauma, and that you had her, well, I won't say her, you were gifted as well, and extremely intuitive and smart and insightful, and just had a high emotional IQ. And so it seems like you also could spot bullshit, but you're also in the middle of it. So being able to kind of have an idea that, this too is for the good, like I'm
mm,
going to do something with this. I am meant to do something with this, um, can actually help you survive.
definitely. I think it's really interesting the difference between how believing what I'm experiencing right now, like I'll make something of it, how that seems super healthy to me and like a natural coping mechanism, and how that can also be twisted by people who say, like, what happened isn't that bad because you made something out of it or you could make something out of it.
One thing that I was very struck by is it almost seems you had another powerful piece that came out, an editorial in the New York Times that is extremely popular, about why you won't ever fall in love with a job again. Talk about what that piece was.
When I was a fresh college graduate, I went to work at Google and I was filled with this institutional fervor. I loved Google with all my heart. It was like I let myself believe that it was the place that I had been searching for years, that it was like really my true home.
And
And that
I
the
just want to say that I understand that, because I had a friend who was one of their main chefs. And this is when they had like no budget for any of the chefs. Later they changed everything and they outsourced, but I got tours of everything and I saw how they just made it so there you had this vegan bar that as much wheatgrass or goji berries or anything. It was like Willy Wonka's chocolate factory, but everything. So you had therapy, right?
I went to therapy there for a while. I had food. I had my Patagonia backpack. And I
Yeah.
think as anybody who's been in foster care or homeless knows, the backpack is very important.
Right. Right.
Um,
I like that part where you swapped out your foster care backpack finally. That's
mhm.
very symbolic for the like
Yeah.
um,
Yeah. When
the different institutional backpack.
yeah, I had different, and I was so proud to wear my Google backpack that was like intern class of 2014. And I really believed that my colleagues were like family members. Like I projected this idea onto my manager that he was like the parent that I had never had,
Right.
and that I was going to Google to have this healing, restorative experience of like family and home.
Right. Right. I mean,
And
they even said do no evil, right? Wasn't that their motto?
yeah, and it's just this place of excellence, right? We're coming from the Midwest and like the working class Midwest, where when I was there, there was a lot of anti-intellectualism, a lot of like your ambition causes your misery. It was like paradise on earth for me.
Mm.
And then I had to report someone for sexual harassment.
And the article was about that.
Hmm. Yeah. And how, unfortunately, I learned that institutions protect themselves.
And I mean, and it just seemed like how everything in your life, again, with hindsight, was leading to that where it's like, okay, Emmy's finally gonna fucking say no and finally gonna just not go along with it and just be like, okay, this is being an advocate for yourself and setting a boundary.
Yeah.
Where a lot of people who have had um, kind of gone through small, constant microaggressions of trespassing, of inappropriateness, it you kind of like get calloused, but the level of trauma that you had enabled you to not just put up with that shit that you shouldn't have had to, but definitely put you in a dangerous position.
It definitely made it a lot harder to confront what was happening and to speak up about it, to have all this other stuff that was, that it brought up, right? I started having really severe PTSD symptoms that kind of overtook my life during this process of like reporting and the investigation. um, I went into it thinking, okay, the institutions are going to be different now.
Yeah.
And yeah, that was not true, but it was true that I was going to be different. And, even though the HR part was horrible, I do think like today I'm on the other side.
Where do you work at now? If you
So I have been writing full time for the last year.
Oh, that's fantastic. Wow.
Yes.
What
So
are you working on now?
I have, well, a lot of stuff for acceptance. And I've been working on a new project that's more of like a research book. I a little bit of a novel. It's just been like, if you read the book, you'll know it was my dream to be able to be a writer and to be able
Yeah,
to
and
really like focus
I
on
did
it.
read your book.
Yeah. And so it's like it's kind of amazing that I, you know, I in a way kind of lost or gave up this career path that meant a lot to me, but I got to what I really, really, really wanted to do.